Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
And in our program today, we're talking about the news in our News Digest unit. And the story today is about China, or mainland China. But there seems to have been some silence in regard to the anniversary of the Cultural Revolution. You think that's something they're very proud of?
No, I do not.
But, well, I guess it's kind of controversial now. So, yeah, they did not really say much about it.
Yeah.
But in any case, this year... supposedly, we had the 50th anniversary of China's Cultural Revolution.
That's right. Now, most of us know what that's about. I actually studied Asian history. And unfortunately, a lot of people died during this period. So I'm not surprised, Tom, that there's silence about the anniversary. But we're going to read through our article, dive in, look a little bit closer at this, and discuss it, and perhaps learn some new terms and phrases. So stay tuned.
Beijing marks the 50th anniversary of China's Cultural Revolution with silence earlier this year. This destructive and bloody event lasted 10 years until Mao Zedong's death in 1976. Newspapers and other media agencies ignored the occasion, including Global Times, a national newspaper run by the Communist Party of China, CPC. No official memorials took place, and Chinese intellectuals were forbidden from talking about it. The Cultural Revolution essentially plunged China into chaos. Mao Zedong started it in order to regain control over the CPC and to defeat what he called representatives of the bourgeoisie in the party, his political rivals. In the end, the Cultural Revolution crippled China's economy, turned its people against each other, destroyed centuries of invaluable culture and history, and caused the deaths of millions of people. The story of Zhang Hongbing exemplifies the horror of the Cultural Revolution, perhaps more than any other. In 1970, then 16-year-old Zhang denounced his own mother to an officer by saying she had criticized Mao and the Cultural Revolution. Zhang's mother was then tied up, publicly humiliated, and tortured, and eventually executed. Now a lawyer, Zhang is racked with feelings of guilt about his mother's death and has appealed to the public to never let it happen again. Roderick McFarquhar, a Harvard University professor and China specialist, once said that China's current president, Xi Jinping, is looking to avoid talking about any uncomfortable facts about the Cultural Revolution. His deliberate silence seems to imply that the CPC is attempting to prevent anyone from challenging its ways of ruling the country, especially by restricting its people's freedom of speech. However, it would be wise for the party to remember the lessons from this tragic event, or history will just repeat itself.
Okay, guys, we're going to get started discussing and explaining some of the terms in here. Silence from Beijing. Beijing here isn't talking about the city. We know cities don't really talk too much, right?
Yeah.
But here we're talking about the government being located in Beijing. We'd say silence from D.C. or Washington, D.C. if we were talking about American government, or silence from the White House, we might say. Here we're saying the government in China's not saying too much. We're going to talk about why that is. But we're coming up against the anniversary of the Cultural Revolution. Anniversary is the date which an event took place in a previous year. So we can have a wedding anniversary. You could have the anniversary of your graduation. There are some sad anniversaries. In my family, I always remember the date my mom passed away. That's the anniversary of her death. And we like to remember people on these days that kind of are special in some way in our lives.
Absolutely. So, of course, A-N-N-O means year. Annual means every year. We have our annual party in December, for example. And so there is silence from Beijing or the government of the PRC. They just aren't talking about the Cultural Revolution. Okay, that's that movement that wanted to change things in China or something. The actual context of our lesson explains that. So let's get to it. Here's the first paragraph. It says, Beijing marked or recognized the 50th anniversary of China's Cultural Revolution with silence earlier this year. Okay, so I guess this is kind of ironic here. They probably didn't mark it at all, but they're saying that they didn't say anything about it. Maybe people were at home thinking, okay, the government is going to have some news stories about the Cultural Revolution or something.
Maybe a celebration.
Maybe some parades or something, but nothing. They were silent. Silent is the adjective. Silence is the noun. I will have silence in my class. You will all be silent.
Yeah, and if you mark a special occasion, it's just a way of saying you point it out, you make sure everybody knows that this is a special thing in some way. And it's kind of funny because the writer just said they marked it with silence, which means they did nothing. So it really wasn't marked at all. Now, this destructive and bloody event lasted 10 years until Mao died in 1976. So if he had continued living, who knows how long it would have continued. When something's destructive, it means many things are destroyed and go through this process where they're obliterated. They're not there anymore. Destructive means harmed. So a lot of people died during this event, and some people were maimed or wounded. Some people were put in prison and didn't get out. So it was a tough time for China. It lasted 10 years. And those people that were targeted for some of this damage were people who were professors or artists, people who had a lot to say about culture in general. They were considered evil and to be destroyed.
Yeah, so this was a destructive time. It caused a lot of destruction. And newspapers and other media agencies ignored the occasion. Of course, we still have newspapers, and we have TV, radio, internet, websites, stuff like that. Those are all media agencies. An agency is a special kind of company that produces a special kind of service, like a travel agency or an advertising agency. These are media agencies, media companies, as I said, different kinds of companies that specialize in giving us news and information. Well, they all ignored the occasion. They didn't say anything about it. They talked about other things. And also a publication that ignored the occasion was the Global Times, which is a national newspaper run by the CPC, or the Communist Party of China.
That's right. So no official memorials took place, and Chinese intellectuals were forbidden from talking about it. We'll often have memorials to remember something. A lot of times when people pass away, instead of maybe a formal funeral, they'll have a memorial service. Or if you have a special event in history and you want to mark it or celebrate it or remember it, you'll have a memorial. Tom mentioned parades. Sometimes we have parades just to memorialize or to remember an event. There are statues in our countries that will memorialize people. They'll have a figure of them so people can look at it and go, oh yeah, this person did a lot for our country. Well, no official memorials took place for the Cultural Revolution. And just recently, and Chinese intellectuals would be those professors or writers or people who had a lot of opinions on what was going on in China.
Basically, smart people, professors, experts, things like that, and the intellectuals were forbidden from talking about it. To forbid means you just don't let somebody do something. Smoking is forbidden in this restaurant. If you need to smoke, get out.
Yeah.
And so here they were forbidden to talk about the Cultural Revolution. If you guys talk about the Cultural Revolution, you are in big, big trouble. You might go to a labor camp. You'll be beaten up by policemen with big bats and stuff like that. I don't think they probably tell them that kind of stuff. But
no.
It's possible. That's something possible that might happen. Okay, now the Cultural Revolution essentially plunged China into chaos. Okay, essentially means basically. We don't really know for sure, but it emphasizes that this is basically what happened. Nobody else can really conclude something else. So, yes, indeed, basically plunged China into chaos. Here we've got the phrase plunge something into something else. Plunge usually means something goes underwater rather quickly. Okay, the diver plunged into the water, for example. So here we're basically saying that chaos pretty much became common very fast in China. Chaos is a situation of disorder. Everything's messy. There's not much law and order. Everyone's probably doing what they want, and everybody's getting hurt and killed and stuff like that. The country was a big mess, like the world was during World War II. It was total chaos.
It was a mess, huh? Well, Mao Zedong is the one who started it because he had some leaders in the Communist Party of China that were trying to take control, and he wanted to destroy them. So he did it for his own reasons, but what happened is then it started this movement that continued to get bigger and bigger. So it just didn't defeat his enemies. It actually affected a lot of just normal people in China. So he started it to regain control over the Communist Party of China and defeat what he called, and these are his words, representatives of the bourgeoisie, which is kind of a French word. So don't feel bad if it's kind of hard to pronounce. That's where it comes from, is France. The bourgeoisie refers to people who were in the middle class, but they were actually actively trying to get more wealthy, as we all are today, aren't we? I would be considered part of the bourgeoisie, as would Tom. So the people who believed in communism theory, they believed that if you wanted to gain wealth, you were a bad person. So they tried to destroy a lot of people who were gaining wealth and getting educated and producing art, maybe to sell. These were all considered bad people. And if you see those quotation marks when you're reading things, guys, it just means those are direct quotes or words from whatever you're talking about. Here we're talking about Mao.
Yep, representatives of the bourgeoisie in the party. That's what he said. We don't know if these people really were representatives of the bourgeoisie or the capitalists, the people who liked money. Remember, communists want everybody to be the same and have a classless society and stuff like that. And these were his rivals, people who were competing for the same thing. If I like Mary and John likes Mary too, then John is my rival for Mary's affection, okay? In the end, John won because his job paid more money than mine does. Okay, but in any case, that's just an example here. There was never any Mary or anything like that. But in any case, that brings us up to the midpoint of our article for today. Let's take a little bit of a break, and then we'll come right back.
Hi everyone, my name is Jenny. 今天我们看的是第10单元。今天的文摘谈的是文革，文化大革命 Cultural Revolution。到这一年已经满50年了，所以这个50周年好像没有人注意到，也没有特别的报道，所以这个地方就要告诉大家是怎么一回事。文章的开头里面他提到北京呢 marked the 50th anniversary， 这个 marked 好，我们先看Mark 它本来是代表做记号，不过这个字可以用在很多不同的地方，像在这里来看的话，你讲的是50周年，它是庆祝的意思，也就是相当于 celebrate。 我们来看它还有别的解释，如果你是 mark papers， 那就是指老师改考卷， mark the spot， 那当然就是你做标记做记号。好，我们来看下面呢，他继续说了，这个文化大革命有10年之久，也就是毛泽东他当权的时候。那我们晓得这个事件对中国来说是一件很大的事情，可是呢，他却没有官方的纪念活动。好，我们看到 No official memorials took place。Took place 这个片语我们都晓得它代表的是举行， 主词是一个事件，当你一个事件或一个活动它举行的时候，举办的时候，你用 take place 是主动语态，特别注意哦。那所以有一个动词是 hold， 我们知道 hold 它本身也代表举办、举行，可是呢，它是指人当主词，一个主办单位它办活动，你用 hold 当动词，可是当你用活动或者事件当主词的话，用 hold 就变成要用被动了。所以说以这个地方来看，它的主动用 take place， 但是如果你用 hold 来改写，你就变成要用被动来讲了，也就是 were held。 好了，没有官方的纪念活动，中国的知识分子也被禁止讨论。好，我们看到禁止谁做某事，当你用 forbid 这个动词的话，记得 forbid somebody from doing something， 所以这里指中国的知识分子被禁止谈论， talking 前面的 from 要特别注意。好，接下来我们再来看下面呢，他就说到了这个文化大革命当时到底是怎么一回事。其实对毛泽东来说，他根本就是利用这个文化大革命，然后呢来击败他党内的敌人 rivals。 Political rivals， 我们知道 rival 是代表对手，在一个球场的竞争对手里就是你的 rival， 当然这个地方是他的政敌，所以是他的political rival.
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Okay, guys, welcome back. We're talking about how Beijing, or the government in China, chose to not really notice that the anniversary of the Cultural Revolution was upon them. They just kind of kept quiet, and they actually forbid any of the intellectuals or people who had things to say about it from talking about it. And these days in China, it's a little dangerous to talk negatively about anything, especially towards the government, because they will imprison you or put you in jail.
You better be careful if you say these kinds of things, because people in China might hear them and you might get in big trouble. If you want to travel there or something and visit your friends, they might keep a visa away from you. So you better watch out. But in any case here, in the end, the Cultural Revolution crippled China's economy. Cripple here just means to make it less effective, make it have some kinds of problems, like a crippled person.
Damage it so it doesn't run so well.
Yeah, although I should say that if you use the word crippled for a person, nowadays I guess it's non-PC to use that word.
A non-PC means not politically correct, which means you have to use the right words or people will say you're a bad person.
And I don't even know what the correct term is. I don't dare say them. Or
disabled.
Disabled, that's okay. The thought police won't come after me on that one. Okay, disabled. Okay, so there's the word there. And in any case, it crippled their economy. It turned people against each other, brother against brother, sister against sister.
Yeah.
It also destroyed centuries of invaluable culture and history. Invaluable means it's so valuable that you just can't put a price on it. And yes, indeed, I understand that the Red Guards were pretty notorious for destroying cultural relics and stuff like that.
They were.
Good thing the Gugong came over here to Taiwan, people say. Otherwise, it would have been destroyed up there. And it caused the deaths of millions of people. Lots of people died up there during that. Also, I think a bunch of people died during the Great Leap Forward as well. My goodness, Mao was really good at killing a bunch of his own people, wasn't he?
Okay, let's not get into trouble here. They could be listening. We could be in trouble. Okay, here we go. We are talking, of course, about all of the damage and destruction that was caused during the Cultural Revolution, where families would turn against each other. Of course, Tom mentioned the Red Guard, which was a military group of young kids. They were in high school and college-age kids, and they were going about, they thought, doing what Mao wanted them to do and destroying people and culture. So it was a sad time in China, of course. Now, the story of Zhang Hongbing exemplifies, or is a good example, we could say that is a good example example of the horror that took place during the Cultural Revolution. Let's talk about this particular person. So in 1970, this person, Zhang Hongbing, was 16 years old. He was just a kid, right? Just a kid, and he denounced his own mother to an officer. By saying she had criticized Mao and the Cultural Revolution. And wow, that's one thing you could never do is criticize Mao or the government or anything that was going on. We don't usually see this word denounced too often. To denounce somebody is to publicly say this person is bad. Maybe they're wrong, maybe they're evil. But this person was denouncing his own mother, which of course put her into a really dangerous position because she would either be mistreated, sometimes they would really torture these people, and sometimes the torture would lead to death.
Well, that seems to have been what happened to his mother. He was just 16, so he probably didn't know what he was doing.
He was brainwashed.
There you go,
yeah.
brainwashed. And so he said that, hey, my mom criticized Mao in the Cultural Revolution. So then they found out about it. They came to the house. They took her. They tied her up, and she was publicly humiliated, wow. Probably tied up in the middle of town, and they insulted her. People spit on her and stuff like that.
Horrible.
Humiliate basically means that you're made to feel extremely embarrassed or ashamed because they pretty much destroy your self-respect and your dignity.
Right.
Doing things like I basically said there. You could be humiliated in front of your friends if somebody tells a secret about you or something like that. I feel so humiliated. How could you do that to me? And she was also tortured, which means people cause you pain so that you can learn your lesson or give people information. And then she was eventually executed, which means you are killed because of a crime you committed.
Right. Well, sadly enough, Zhang, who is now grown up and realizes what he's done, he's racked with feelings of guilt. Racked with just means filled with something. Racked with feelings of guilt about his mother's death. And he's appealed to the public to never let this happen again. If you appeal to, and you always have to use appeal to something or appeal to someone typically. Appeal to something or someone means you make a very urgent request. It's very serious, and usually you use this word when you're appealing to the public. Or maybe you're appealing to a higher court because you've just been convicted of a crime. You can appeal to a higher court to overturn or change or reverse the decision. He appealed to the public to please, and these are his words, never let this happen again.
Okay, let's go to Boston now. Let's go to Harvard University, or Harvard there. We've got a professor by the name of Roderick MacFarquhar, and he is also a China specialist. A specialist, of course, is somebody who knows a lot about something. And this particular professor once said that China's current president, Xi Jinping, is looking to avoid talking about any uncomfortable facts about the Cultural Revolution. So this silence in Beijing seems to come from Xi Jinping himself. He doesn't want to talk about it. He's going to be silent, and he wants to avoid talking about these uncomfortable facts about the Cultural Revolution. He just doesn't want people, I guess, to know about it or to think about it. Just forget that. That was in the past. Let's move forward.
Yeah, so his deliberate silence, here we're talking about Xi Jinping, his deliberate, or if something's deliberate, guys, it's not accidental, it's on purpose. His deliberate silence seems to imply that the CPC is attempting to prevent anyone from challenging its ways of ruling the country, especially by restricting people's freedom of speech. Restricting means limiting. You tell someone you can't do this. These are the boundaries. You can't go outside that. And to imply something means you strongly suggest something, but you don't say it directly. Right now, it's not a good time to criticize the government. I've definitely felt that because they've started arresting people and putting people in prison for saying negative things about the government. So be careful.
Yeah, so I could say, hey, I saw you talking to that person from that other company. Oh, are you implying something? Are you suggesting that I'm doing something I'm not supposed to be doing or something like that? So in any case here, yes, his silence is deliberate. It seems to imply that everyone should just forget about this and that you don't want to challenge the country. Don't bring up the mistakes of the past because you're criticizing the government that way. And so they're restricting or limiting freedom of speech. However, it would be wise for the party, this is the writer's opinion here, to remember the lessons from this tragic event, or history will just repeat itself. What's that phrase there? Those who forget about the past are condemned to repeat it.
Yeah, very, very good. Yeah. Hopefully that isn't the case because we'd hate for anyone to have to go through what Zhang Hongbing did with his own mother, which was terrific tragedy. Okay, guys, right now we're going to listen one more time to our Chinese teacher, and then we'll be back.
好，我们继续往下看。下面呢，提到文化大革命到了最后的时候，到底是怎么一回事？In the end， 我们注意一下这个片语 in the end 放在一个句子里头，它就是一个转折性的字，代表的是 finally。可是我们要晓得，常常会搞混的就是这个介系词部分。如果你是讲 at the end of something， 这表示的是哪一个点，是末端的意思，是在一个事情的末端，在一个时期的末端。那记得它不是三个字，它一定是 at the end of something。比如说at the end of the day， 在这一天结束的时候，记得要跟 in the end 分开来看。继续往下，下面呢就说到文化大革命其实瘫痪了中国的经济，让人民反目成仇，而且还毁坏了历史跟文化。那我们来看下面就有一个例子。好，这个例子是有点可悲的。这个人叫做张宏斌，当时呢他就向军官告发了自己的母亲，而且呢还说他的母亲呢批评毛泽东，批评文化大革命，结果害他的妈妈怎么样？我们来看这句话，也就是张宏斌他的母亲 was then tied up, publicly humiliated and tortured and eventually executed。 这句话其实连续有4个动词，都是过去式的动词。他被 tied up， 第二个他被 humiliated， 再来他被 tortured 拷打，最后他被 executed处决。好，这样子的4个动词连续，当然有一种强调、加强、重叠的功能哦。再来往下，下面就说了，当然后来他事后想起，他心里充满了悔恨，充满了罪恶感。好，我们看到这里说到的备受折磨，充满罪恶感。John is racked with feelings of guilt。 我们晓得这个地方动词 rack本来就代表折磨，换句话说，让你身心受到折磨。这个动词的意思用被动，人受到什么的折磨，请记得 be racked with。 再来往下一段，我们再看到其实有一位哈佛大学教授，也是一个中国专家，他呢就讲到最近中国的国家主席他呢避免谈有关文化大革命的这些事情，其实是故意的。他这边说到 His deliberate silence seems to imply。 好，我们看到 seems to 后面当然是加动词。我们知道 seem 它有很多的句型，有时候 seem 后面是加一个 that 加子句，有时候的 seem 你可以直接加不定词，像在这边就是一个不定词片语跟在后面。好，我们今天的解释就到这边，下次见咯。
That's all for today, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And here's hoping that all of your news is favorable news for you. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.